Hey everybody, my name is Peter. I'm here at the Porter Ballroom in Portland. Today I'm going to be setting up an analog console for a MixMinus SAN to teleconferencing and video conferencing softwares. And I'm making this video because I did the digital equivalent with an XR18. So I wanted to show one possibility of how it might be done with an analog console. So I'm going to show you the routing that I've got set up and how I got there. So first of all, I've got two mics right here, very similar to the way I did it in the last demo. Just a handheld mic here, a lavalier mic. It might be a little bit bright for that. I hope you can read that Sharpie. I got a lavalier mic that I'm wearing on my body, and then I have the Zoom laptop, the input coming back here from, once again, way over there. I'm using a Mac this time, but I've just got a line running in via a laptop DI into the board. So those are my three inputs, and I've got two different types of outputs, and the outputs are a little funky because of my need to interface with the audio card on the Zoom laptop, which is up front. So very much like a digital patch, this board fortunately has a USB B-type output and input. It's a two-way, so you could track two-track audio to a DAW if you wanted. I'm using it for an output into the audio card in the Zoom laptop, or it actually works in reverse and gives you two-track audio in. And you can control that through this button right here. If you press this button, you're now taking in, but if the button is depressed, then you are sending USB audio out via a matrix. And that matrix is just a copy of the main left-right, which is where my limitation comes in terms of routing. Because this little knob here, my output via USB, I can't actually choose where this comes from. It's hard routed to be a matrix copy of this main left-right. So what that means is it's tied to not only the fader and the mute, the main break mute, it's also tied to these faders, which are in line with the left-right, and their mutes, and most importantly, the preamp gain. So everything is coming out here out of this cable, and I have my in-room audio taking up the output of my monitor send, this fader right here, and I'll show you how that's working with some audio here in a second. It's just the main fader control of, this is your bus control of your aux sends, just like any other aux you would send out. So if I grab a microphone real quick, and I make sure this is all the way down. Hey, check, check. I'm speaking to the mic now, and I turn my aux up, and you can very clearly hear the handheld microphone that I'm using right now in the room. So that is how I've got my left-right going. So if you wanted to master mute everything in the room, all of a sudden this break function here, which is just the same as a master mute on a master fader, it only works for the output that you're sending the USB audio, because it's just a matrix. This XLR output isn't plugged into anything right now because it's not going anywhere. I guess I could duplicate it and send it to another speaker, but then I'm beholden to the levels of the gain that I have sending to the USB, which is pretty different because this knob right here is just a level control. It's not a gain control. It's not going to make your signal significantly louder in terms of power scaling, like mic to line. So you have to crank the gains on your mics pretty far up, at least on this board with these specific preamps. Luckily, you can switch your EQ to be the monitor for the live PA send in the room. If not, it would be pretty gnarly. You can hear why I don't use analog boards to mix lavaliers in this ballroom. It's because even with all the curtains shuttered, the plate glass and the rectangular shape of the room, the low ceilings, is causing quite a bit of mid-range modal frequency buildup, which just makes this insane environment to mix in. So this also means that your individual mutes won't control the volume that you have in the room. And I'll demonstrate this again with a live mic. Is my fader is all the way up, and it's easy to forget if you're in the habit of mixing like you normally do mix, like the board was designed to. With the faders, you can hear me, and now my fader is all the way down, and you can still hear me because once again I'm sending with the aux send, and this is my master fader for the volume of the mic I have instead of my main left-right fader. So what this mute does is changes the mute settings for your virtual audience, and that's what all these controls minus this aux send does. This aux send is where you live for in-room audio, which is pretty important to keep in mind because you don't want to lose control of something like a lavalier, especially if you are fighting some EQ issues, some modal issues in the room. I would recommend having something like a GEQ in line if you could, or if you're just blessed with beautiful acoustics, then I'm just infinitely jealous of you. Okay, for extra clarity of the MixMinus send, I want to get this close-up shot because the routing is a little weird because my outputs are sort of flipped. So because the main left-right is not actually feeding our PA, our monitor sends are, it may look a little bit just different, a little bit stranger in terms of where the MixMinus is. So the MixMinus actually becomes more visible with your faders, which is more easy to understand, at least for the bus send. So like I said, the aux will be feeding the room, so just a tiny bit because your preamp is going to be pretty high on this board just to send the USB the right amount of signal. But the MixMinus is you're building all of your mics and your media in your mix that you want to send to Zoom. So these come up, and they come up pretty far for my Zoom input just because it's a little quiet. And the minus part is going to be your Zoom laptop, because if you send the audio that you're getting in from your Zoom laptop right here to your mix, this mix is going to go straight back into your Zoom laptop. This would feed into the USB, and then you have your infinite repeating feedback loop. So this is the minus part of your feed. So with this USB connection I have coming out of here, this is my main output to my laptop. I have got it going through this active USB repeater for the same reason as I said in my digital demo, is that the signal will degrade after about 9 feet. So it needs active repeating to keep the signal going across a good distance. So I've got that plugged in, and this is going very neatly and professionally all the way here to my converter on my Mac. The last time I did my demo, I used a PC and I wanted to show this patch working with a Mac, which is essentially the same patch, this USB audio send. So I will once again show the audio settings here, and you can see my built-in headphones is what I want. That is my laptop DI going out to the analog board as my third input, and then I want this USB audio codec right here, and I'm going to take my microphone, and you can hear me in the room, and you can also see plenty of signal coming in right here. Okay, and if I do a test, I have audio in the room, which is pretty easy, and that's exactly what we like. Alright, so now we get to test out the fun part, which is having 3 different instances of Zoom open and running all the audio through the analog mixer. So I'm going to take a few mics outside, I'm going to do a few remote tests. So here's me talking into a handheld and repeating through the speaker into my mic. Alright, then switch to the microphone on my iPhone. You should be able to hear me talking in the room on the PA through the mics on the camera. Okay, now one more time with this laptop now that I've got the microphone working. Alright, this is with the handheld that I can hear myself pretty clearly through the laptop speakers. And the lavalier in the hall is also coming through the system, back out through the client laptop and into my speakers here on the laptop in the hallway. And last but not least, talking into the microphone built in a laptop as a remote Zoom caller. And hopefully you are hearing some audio come in through the speakers on the camera. Alright, so that is the demo of the analog routing for video conferencing software audio in and out. It was a USB audio send, which is pretty similar to the digital audio send that I did in my other video. But this way you kind of avoid having to do something like this and make some crazy connections and, you know, mess up your impedance and all sorts of gender bending nonsense. We do have this one kind of unsightly send going on here through a monitor send, just because we don't have any 1/4 inch cables in the property that I'm at. There are also no XLR outputs besides the main left-right dedicated analog consoles with no digital or processing or effects on board. Would just have line outs at 1/4 inch or XLR outputs out the back. And the way to really route audio in so that an audio card can recognize that for a video conferencing call is going to be another USB audio interface, a dedicated box. Something like a Focusrite Scarlett is a really common 2-in, 2-out, just kind of home recording setup. And you can plug that in by USB and your computer recognizes it as an audio device. And I hear that they work and are recognized for video conferencing software. We also don't have any of those on property because they're more recording oriented, but they are pretty cheap. If anybody ever wanted to try it out, I think, you know, $25-30 maybe for a rental depending on where you are, what you're getting. But if there are any other ways around this kind of patch, ways to do this, special converters that I don't know about that trick the 1/8 inch audio jack into seeing in and out, I'd definitely be interested in knowing. As it stands for my property though and my gear, the USB audio patch works well. It may be a little bit more stressful to work with the auxiliary sends in the room because you lose a lot of physical functionality mixing, such as having actual mute buttons or fader controls, which you're reflexively used to just pulling down if something's actually wrong in the room. But it is possible, and I hope this video was informative or you know, got you thinking about ideas and ways around your audio patches. So good luck with all the rest of your setups and stay safe.